What if I told you that the one thing you've been doing your entire life, the thing you thought made you a good person, is the exact reason you're lonely right now? Sit with that for a moment. My name is Margaret. I'm 79 years old. I live in a small house in Columbus, Ohio. I have a garden in the backyard, a cat named Biscuit, and 3 children who call me maybe twice a month, if I'm lucky. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I don't want sympathy. I'm telling you this because I made mistakes, real ones, the kind that don't show up until it's too late to fix them. And if there's even one person watching this right now who is 65 or 70 or 75 and still has time to change, then I need you to hear what I'm about to say, because nobody told me. Nobody sat me down and said, Margaret, the way you're living right now is going to cost you everything. Nobody warned me. And by the time I figured it out myself, the damage was already done. So today, I'm going to tell you the 7 things I would change if I was 65 again. Some of them will surprise you. Some of them might even hurt a little, but I promise you, every single one of them is true. Let's start at the beginning. When I turned 65, I thought I had done everything right. I had raised 3 children, Thomas, Denise, and my youngest, Carl. I had stayed in a marriage for 41 years, even when it was hard. I had cooked thousands of meals, driven to hundreds of school events, worked part-time at the library for 22 years, and given every spare moment of my life to the people I loved. I was proud of that. I thought that kind of devotion meant something. My husband, Gerald, passed away when I was 67. Heart attack, sudden, and just like that, the house went quiet in a way I had never experienced before. Not peaceful quiet, heavy quiet, the kind of quiet that sits on your chest. I expected my children to show up, not every day. Well, I wasn't unreasonable, but I expected them to check in. I expected Sunday dinners or at least Sunday calls. I expected to feel like I still mattered to them, but here's what actually happened. Thomas moved to Phoenix years before and got busy with his startup. Denise lived 40 minutes away, but was always rushing between her kids, her job, her husband's family. And Carl, my youngest, the one I'd sacrificed the most for, called me on my birthday and forgot to call on Christmas. I told myself they were busy. I made excuses for them. I kept the porch light on every Thanksgiving, hoping someone would just show up. And here is where I have to be honest with you, painfully honest. I let it happen. I allowed it because I had never, not once in my 67 years of life, learned how to ask for what I needed. I had only ever learned how to give. You may have experienced this. That moment when you realize you've been so focused on being needed that you forgot to figure out what you actually need. I had built my entire identity around being the caregiver, the one who remembered everyone's birthdays, the one who mailed cards, the one who never complained, never asked, never burdened anyone. And do you know what that taught my children? It taught them that Mum is fine. Mum doesn't need anything. Mum will always be there. And they moved through their lives treating me exactly the way I had taught them to treat me, like the background, like furniture, like something permanent that doesn't need maintenance. This is the part nobody talks about. When you spend decades being selfless, people don't reward you with love and appreciation. They reward you with assumption. They begin to assume you'll always be okay. They stop checking because you've never shown them that you weren't. One winter, I fell on the icy porch steps. I was alone. I lay there for almost 20 minutes before I could get myself up. I didn't call any of my children. I was afraid of being a burden. Let me say that again. I was afraid of being a burden to the 3 people I'd spent 40 years of my life serving. When I finally got inside, I sat at the kitchen table and cried. not from the pain in my hip, from the realization, from the cold, quiet truth that had been growing in my chest for years, but that I had never let myself speak out loud. I had given everything, and somehow, in all that giving, I had disappeared. But what happened next, in that cold kitchen with ice still on my coat, changed the rest of my life. I sat there, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I didn't get up to do something for someone else. I just sat. And I asked myself a question I had never asked before. Margaret, what do you want? Not what does Thomas need, not what would make Denise happy, not what would keep the peace. What do you want? I didn't know the answer. That scared me more than the fall. I got out a notebook, an old yellow legal pad that Gerald used to keep by the phone, and I started writing. Not a to-do list, not a grocery list, just what I wanted, what I had always wanted, what I had set aside and set aside and set aside until I had forgotten it was ever there. I wanted to take a watercolour class. I had thought about it for 30 years. I wanted to visit my college roommate, Ruth, who lived in Vermont and who I hadn't seen in 14 years. I wanted to stop apologising for taking up space. I wanted to tell my children, clearly, lovingly, but firmly, that I needed more from them, that I was not furniture, that I was their mother, and I was still here, and I deserved to be treated like it. And something shifted in me that day, something quiet but permanent. I didn't yell. I didn't send an angry letter. I simply decided at 71 years old to start living like my life mattered. Because it did. It always had. I had just forgotten. So here are the 7 things I would change if I was 65 again. I want you to listen carefully, not just with your ears, with your heart. The first thing I would change is this. I would stop trying to earn love by being endlessly available. When you are always available, when you never say no, when you drop everything, when you answer every call and fill every request, people stop valuing your presence. They start expecting it. And expectation is the enemy of gratitude. Love is not a transaction. But when you behave as though you have to earn your place in someone's life, they will let you keep earning it forever. Set limits, not from anger, from self-respect. The people who love you will stay. The people who only valued your service will show you exactly who they are. The second thing I would change is this. I would have learned the difference between being kind and being invisible. There is a version of kindness that serves others beautifully. And then there is another version, a quieter, more dangerous version, where kindness becomes a way of making yourself small so that everyone around you is comfortable. I was that second kind of kind. I smiled when I was hurting. I said, I'm fine when I wasn't. I made peace when I should have made a point. And slowly, over decades, I became someone that nobody truly knew because I had never shown them who I really was. You are allowed to be a good person and still take up space. You are allowed to be gentle and still speak your truth. Kindness should never cost you your identity. The third thing, and this one is important, I would have invested in friendships the way I invested in family. This is where most people make a mistake. They pour everything into their children, their marriages, their family obligations, and they let their friendships quietly drift. Because friendships feel optional. Family feels mandatory. But when the children move away and the marriage ends and the house goes quiet, it is your friends who hold you together. It is your friends who call just to hear your voice. It is your friends who sit with you at the kitchen table and remember who you were before the years changed you. Yeah, I let Ruth drift. I let 3 other dear friends drift over the years, always meaning to call, always too tired, always next month. By the time I understood what I had lost, 2 of them were gone from this world entirely. Don't let that be your story. Call the friend you've been meaning to call. Make the trip you've been postponing. Time is not as patient as we think it is. The 4th thing I would change, I would have spoken honestly about money and planned for being alone. This is the one people really don't want to talk about, but I'm 79 and I've earned the right to say it plainly. When Gerald died, I had no idea where anything was. The accounts, the insurance, the investments, he had handled all of it and I'd let him because that's how we were raised. That's what women of my generation did. I spent 6 months in a fog trying to untangle our finances while also grieving, while also figuring out how to be a single person for the first time in 41 years. It was one of the most overwhelming experiences of my life. If you are in a relationship and only one of you handles the money, change that today. Know where everything is. Have your own account. Understand the plan. And if you are already alone, please sit down with someone you trust and make sure you have a clear picture of where you stand and what comes next. Not because something bad will happen, because being prepared is an act of love toward yourself. The 5th thing I would change is this. I would have gotten comfortable with silence and with being alone. Not loneliness, there is a difference. Loneliness is painful. It is absence. It is wanting connection and not having it. But solitude, real solitude, is something different. It is the ability to sit with yourself in peace without needing noise or company to fill the space. I had never developed that. My whole life had been full of other people's needs. And so when the house went quiet after Gerald, I didn't know what to do with myself. I turned on the television just to hear voices. I ate dinner standing up at the counter because sitting at the table alone felt too sad. It took me 2 years to learn how to be still, 2 years to discover that I actually liked the morning quiet with my coffee, that I liked choosing what to watch without negotiating, that there was a version of alone that was not abandonment. It was freedom. Learn to be with yourself now while you have time to practice. It is one of the most valuable things you will ever do. The 6th thing I would change, I would have let go of old resentments much, much sooner. I carried things Gerald had said in arguments decades ago, a falling out with my sister Helen that lasted 7 years over something I can barely remember now, slights from neighbours, disappointments from friends. I carried them quietly because I thought letting go meant saying what happened was okay. But that's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is not telling someone that what they did was acceptable. Forgiveness is setting down a weight that was never yours to carry in the first place. It is choosing your peace over your pride. And I wasted years, real irreplaceable years, holding on to pain that the other person had long forgotten. Helen died 4 years ago. We had only just begun to repair things. I think about that more than I'd like to admit. Don't wait, not because the other person deserves your forgiveness, because you deserve your freedom. And the 7th thing, my number 1 regret, is this. I would have started living for myself a full decade earlier, not selfishly, not carelessly, but deliberately. I would have taken the watercolour class at 65 instead of 72. I would have booked the trip to Vermont at 66 instead of 75. I would have redecorated my bedroom the way I actually wanted it, not the way Gerald preferred, years before I finally did it at 73 and discovered I love the colour blue on walls. I spent so many years waiting for permission, waiting for my children to be grown, for Gerald to be settled, for life to slow down enough that I could finally turn my attention to myself without guilt. But that moment never comes on its own. You have to choose it. Here is what I want to leave you with. You have done enough for other people. You have given enough, sacrificed enough, waited enough. And if you are watching this right now at 65 or 70 or 75 or 80, I want you to hear something that nobody may have ever said to you clearly. The rest of your life is still yours, not your children's, not your grandchildren's, not the version of you that exists in everyone else's expectations. Yours. There is still time to take the class, to make the call, to book the trip, to forgive the person, to say what you need, to sit quietly on your porch and feel, maybe for the first time, like you are enough, exactly as you are. Margaret. The real Margaret, not the one who existed only in service to others. She took her watercolour class. She visited Ruth in Vermont. She called her children and told them, calmly and lovingly, that she needed to hear from them more. Thomas calls on Sundays now. Denise and I have lunch on the third Saturday of every month. Carl is still working on it, and I have decided to stop waiting for Carl to figure it out and simply enjoy the love that is already there. It is not the ending I imagined, but it is a real one, and it is mine. If you are somewhere in the middle of this story, if you recognise yourself in any of it, please don't wait for a fall on an icy porch to wake you up. Don't wait for the silence to become unbearable. Start today, not tomorrow. Today. Because the truth is, the one that nobody says out loud, but everyone who reaches my age eventually understands, is that the greatest gift you can give the people who love you is a version of yourself that is fully, honestly, peacefully alive. Be that person. You've earned it.